So Mark, I'd like to talk about sales
Sure.
because a lot of people that I work with, we work with at Aspire, sales is a real challenge. And, it's uncomfortable for them. They don't really know how to go about doing it. It doesn't feel very natural. And a lot of our business owner clients, that's their one nemesis is selling. It's the one thing that makes the job, probably why our CEOs, our best CEOs have had business development experience. But you are able to, as an introvert, go in and, kind of get some training and develop a sales system. Can you tell us a little bit about your sales system?
Well, it's not my sales system, but basically it was a sales system primarily taught and developed at IBM, Xerox, and AT&T.
Okay.
So they all more or less followed sort of the same sales system. And I don't know how into it you want to get, but it's basically, it breaks it down into a process where you prospect for potential clients. You go through and qualify the clients that you've potentially found. You go through a data gathering phase. You develop solutions with them. You present or recommend the solutions that are most appropriate for the applications, and then you go through the closing process and following up after the sale. So it's a very thorough process that you go through, and of course they give you tactics and techniques and different things to go in terms of some of the psychology behind sales and some of that. But it's basically just following the fairly defined process.
Okay, so a couple of questions. We obviously aren't going to go completely into depth, but let's say that you had to teach somebody the system, or had to maybe tell somebody what were the three maybe most significant things about the system that made it work, maybe versus other approaches that people could take.
It's hard to break anything out because really I think you have to follow the system in its entirety.
Okay.
Otherwise, if you don't, you start having problems you get all the way to the last phase and the customer's not willing to move forward with a contract with you.
So I would say that's number one right there. That the way the system works, and I know that we've talked about this before, the way the system works, you're working through a process with a potential customer so that at the end of the process you are not doing hard selling closing techniques.
Correct.
You don't need to, and I know that you've told me this before. What's the key to that? Why?
Because closing happens at the very beginning and through the process. You get the commitment from the customer. Once you've identified some issues that you know that you can help them with, you get a commitment that, okay, here's what we'll do is we'll go through the process, I'll learn more about your company, we'll talk about the applications, we'll talk about the recommendations, and once we go through this process, at the end of it, I want to make sure that we agree, and at any phase we can stop if this isn't working out for you. But as we go through the process, at the end of the process, I want to make sure that we then move forward and can implement these ideas. And that starts at the very beginning. And as you go through each phase, it's constantly, will this work for you? And then you get agreement with the customer that, okay, we agree that we're going to continue moving forward with this exploration. Again, really making sure that you get the commitment that we will move forward with implementing these changes at the end of this process. As you continue to go through that, signing the contract, which you're not supposed to say, but approving the paperwork, it's a natural phase, and it goes without having to do any hard closing.
I love that. So I think what I hear you say is that there are these steps, and in the very beginning, you kind of go to you invite the customer to the first step, and you basically are gaining commitment at that point. You're saying, okay, if we do the first step and you then we'll go to the second step. If you don't like it, you're out.
Yep. And the more complex the sale, the more important it is, even to the point when I was doing complex large communication systems, I would have dates and phases all laid out in my initial thank you letter for their time after the initial meeting, that we're going to explore this, and then right in with those commitments are approving the paperwork.
So when you worked with a lot of other salespeople that were all taught the same sales system for the most part.
Correct.
I imagine that some salespeople in that organization were more successful than others. Can you think off the top of your head, the ones who were not as successful, where did they stumble typically?
I would typically find that the biggest issue is them not feeling confident that their time was enough value that they would say, if I'm going to spend my time with you and you're going to spend your time with me, that the plan is that we're going to do business together at the end of this engagement. Yeah.
So they didn't have the confidence.
Yeah.
And And how could they have developed the confidence, do you think? I mean, is it?
And I think it's more of a discipline issue. I think you have to start off from the very beginning, addressing the fact that this relationship is to move forward to a mutually beneficial contract between the two parties. And I just think that their lack of discipline, maybe it's something different, but I always kind of looked at it. They were typically a little bit less organized, and it was more of an issue of discipline, where they would get talking on all different subjects, and they would, go through all different phases instead of kind of sticking to a little bit of the structure of that process. They would jump around a little bit too much, and then, the customers using them more for information gathering rather than solution developing to a contract gathering type phases.
So they might have been focused on building the relationship and having a nice conversation with the customer. Meanwhile, the customer's sitting back and picking their brain and sort of taking control of the process. And while you're still developing a good relationship with the customer, kind of in the back of your mind, you've got this checkbox. Okay, we have to have this agreement at the end. This information has to be exchanged, right? And so you're actually facilitating through various steps in a pretty disciplined manner.
And it's probably because I'm not very relationship focused in that way, which may or may not be a good thing or a bad thing. But I was focused on the process and helping the customer and what are your issues, what are your concerns, what are your problems. I was never really, personally that focused on, having that relationship. I always looked at that relationship. If I provide value at the end of the relationship, we're going to walk as, part as friends, and we did. So I sort of looked at it, I was serving them to the best of my abilities. I wasn't so focused on the relationship, but those relationships did develop over time. Otherwise, I would have got referrals and references and all these other things that I did get out of these opportunities.
It sounds like it was a relationship based on respect and based on kind of reliability. Like they knew that you were going to do what you promised that you were going to do.
Sure.
Right. Great. Thanks.
Okay.